The Institute for Government, founded in 2008 with a mission to make government more effective.
The House of Lords is a working house, and it has an important role in our constitution. The IFG is an unusual form of think tank. It doesn't deal in party politics. It deals with the management of government and how government and politics works.
I think the difference between what the Institute for Government does and many of the other think tanks is it's got the deeper and more profound sense of what government is actually supposed to be there. It's prepared to look at what needs to get done and to get it done well. And I think that's where its contribution is just much deeper and much more profound.
If you didn't have the IFG, you'd have to invent it, because the IFG is a sort of repository of research into insight about how government works.
There is a tremendous demand for precisely the kind of resources that Britain can mobilise.
The question of how the civil service can work better for government is at the heart of the IFG's work. From setting out new ideas for increasing the expertise of officials to putting forward innovative ways to strengthen accountability and leadership, the IFG is at the forefront of the push to reimagine UK government.
People feel that they can talk to researchers in the IFG, they trust that they're going to get a fair hearing and be fairly represented. And so they bring, if you like, the internal view of reform as well as the external review of reform, and that cocktail is really powerful.
I think it's really important that politicians have a safe space where they can actually say what they think is working and what isn't working, and it's not going to be used as a weapon to be thrown at them. And the IFG also has a really important role in creating that kind of safe space which allows learning to happen.
The 2010 general election resulted in a hung parliament for the first time in over 30 years. Uncharted territory for nearly everyone working in government. It set the IFG buzzing with constitutional and political questions.
There was no one alive you could talk to about a coalition for the UK government. And it was really important to have people at IFG, as it were, marking our homework, looking at us and saying, well, why are you doing it that way?
When I was in my last main role in government, it was the period of austerity. How do you build consensus, or if not consensus, how do you build understanding for some very difficult decisions? And the IFG convened and set up some really fantastic sort of qualitative research.
In 2013, the IFG published the first edition of Whiteall Monitor, its flagship annual review of the size, shape and performance of the civil service.
I think one of the benefits of Whiteall Monitor is that it's now been running for over a decade and essentially provides a concise but pretty comprehensive look at size, shape, performance, function of the civil service, and therefore creates a longitudinal data set and study, if you like, for us to consider.
In 2015 came Ministers Reflect, a series of interviews that's included more than 150 conversations with former ministers discussing the reality of being a minister and offering advice to newcomers taking on the role.
Getting ministers to sit down and talk about their experience, it's gold dust. It gives people a really good opportunity to understand what things look like from the other end of the telescope.
I became the longest serving health secretary ever. And then one Monday evening, I suddenly became Foreign Secretary. And all that knowledge over nearly 6 years that I'd accumulated, not only did I have no one to pass it on to, but I was completely full of Foreign Secretary business. And I then did sit down with the IFG and say, well, actually, this is what I figured out. And I think that's really important.
From the summer of 2016 onwards, just one topic gripped British politics: Brexit. The IFG played a key role in supporting ministers, mandarins, journalists, understanding and explaining the complexities of that topic that engulfed and consumed Whitehall and Westminster in the months and years following the referendum.
I think around Brexit, the IFG, for instance, really did emerge as one of the very few coherent and objective observers on what was going on.
I think IFG's done a really good job and positioned itself very strongly in terms of that kind of constitutional commentating when really complicated things have been happening, and obviously when we had endless changes of Prime Minister and things that challenged the procedural boundaries of what was possible, including during Brexit. IFG was really good at distilling that down, getting over the essence of an issue really clearly.
In 2017, the IFG published the first edition of its Performance Tracker, an annual data-led stocktake of public services.
Getting lots of data which you can track through time and compare with what people have said they're going to do is absolutely vital. And of course, government will choose which bits it wants to publish and all the rest of it, but it's important for the IFG to stand back and say, here are what we think are the really important things, and to develop them in a very impartial and rigorous way.
As political revolving doors have brought new governments, the IFG has been there providing support to the politicians and to new civil servants.
A new permanent secretary arriving who's not been born and brought up in the civil service may not know how to be a permanent secretary, so actually quiet, impartial help and advice is really necessary.
I think IFG has done an amazing job in terms of the Preparing for Government series, because they recognise that actually people who've been inside the system, who've been permanent secretaries, can offer helpful insights that can help future ministers get ahead of things so they are hitting the ground running. That programme is one of their real flagship offerings and has, it makes a real difference to the quality of government.
Ahead of the last general election, the polls pointed to a change of government and a new Prime Minister, the seventh in the IFG's lifetime. The Commission on the Centre of Government was launched in 2024 at an event featuring two former Prime Ministers, Gordon Brown and Sir John Major.
When you speak about something like the centre of government in the Commission for Government, it does force you to reflect on what happened during the period you were Prime Minister. And that's very helpful because the extraneous matter has just disappeared and you can focus actually on the decisions and how the decision-making process worked.
Today, the IFG's work on public finances have been adopted by the Treasury.
Well, as Chief Secretary, I came in and have done the first multi-year spending review for a very long time in this country, and we were able to implement a number of the recommendations that the Institute for Government had put forward in its work over many years, talking to former Chief Secretaries, but also comparing us internationally with other countries. The IFG had already done lots of work on one of my pet projects on integrating finance systems, which really enabled me to push the delivery of that forward much more quickly internally here, because a lot of the policy thinking had already been done at the Institute for Government.
In an increasingly febrile political climate, how can the IFG retain trust when the public are losing their trust in politicians?
We are, at the moment, in a global struggle between democracy and autocracy. And if we're going to prevail, as I obviously want us to do, then we have to look at the plumbing of our own democracies and say, how do we do things better? The IFG is central to that mission.
I think any institution that is rigorous and is empirical and is based on fact is always going to be more trusted than swings and arrows of political debate. It's absolutely essential that you have the expertise and insight of an institution like the IFG to help inform and guide the reforms that I am absolutely no doubt will need to be introduced into the way in which we take decisions and we govern ourselves for years to come.
I think that the space which continues to be independent, impartial, open across parties, open to politicians, open to civil servants, I think is probably more important for the next decade than it has been even for the last period of time.
The nature and flow of politics is changing. The value of the IFG is that it stays there looking at the management of politics and of the administration of government, and can look at it with a dispassionate eye, knowing of its background and looking at what still has to come.
Over 18 years, one man has been there through it all.
I was there in 2008 when David Sainsbury had this idea. He understood what was needed. He'd been a minister. There is nobody else that could have done this and pulled it off.
From devolution to net zero, public services to public finances, ministers to the machinery of the civil service, the IFG is focused on the key issues facing UK government today and in the future. Over the past decade or so, government has changed in a way few of us could have imagined. But throughout it all, the IFG has been here, remaining a constant, candid friend, explaining the good and the bad of politics. Long may it continue to do so.